We'll be getting started around 6 p.m. To give people a chance to be traffic and stuff and get here. If you want pizza, there's pizza and food in the back over there, as well as possible water. So feel free to grab it. Thank you very much. We'll be starting around 6. I'll let people go ahead. I'll let people go ahead and grab food if they will. Whenever, whenever we're back to our tables, I'll get started and go into our content for tonight. So thank you all for being here.
Be like, hey vlog. You know, uh, uh, now I'm extra nervous. Really? Oh no, I'm extra confident. I mean, do I just plug it into the? Yeah. Well, actually, I'll go into my stuff first. Okay. Yeah. Do I just? I'm just. Do you want your? You forgot your thing. I'm gonna let you do it. Like moderate the chat and stuff. So. Oh my gosh. Probably not. Probably not. Here we go. I know it's like you're good. You're good. This ain't like the last one. It's a little different around here. All righty. So thank you everybody for being here. I know we're small but mighty tonight, so thank you very much. Just for everybody's notice, this event is live streamed and recorded. We do that so we can make sure we save people's testimony and the content for tonight. This is our second People's Hearing in our series of three. So this one's going to be about around voter education. We're in the midterm year 2026 and then going into 2028 as primaries. But we have some races in Michigan that are coming up. And, I think a lot of our population and a lot of our people, especially Black and brown people, may not necessarily know a lot of stuff that's happening around voters' rights right now, especially with the repeal of some voter rights acts from, some of the known voter rights acts that have been repealed now. So we're going to talk about some voter education, some voter history. We're going to talk about voter education and voter history in Michigan. I do want to thank Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, as well as Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated for taking time to be here tonight. Our presenter is Jamel Thompson for tonight, who is a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So I want to thank him for this time. So we're going to go into what People's Hearing is. We're going to go into some expectations for tonight, and then we'll go into our presentation. We usually end with people's testimony. We'll give, sometimes people will linger in, so we'll see what we're looking like for that. But based on that, we'll go into people's testimony, where we share a little bit maybe about our lives, some experiences that we're having, maybe some frustrations or troubles. and then we'll go into next step solution to actionables for how we can solve that together. So without further ado, I'll start. So if you've never been to a people's hearing, you're like, what is a people's hearing? A people hearing is an event basically to document community experiences. Our last one was around public safety, but this one is going to be around voter education. To build a public record of testimony, a lot of times that public record is not always available or is not always community centered. So we want to make sure that we're centering community with these public testimonies, and then also highlight community-driven solutions. So one of the big things that came out of our first people's hearing was a bail fund, a community bail fund. So we've been doing some work around that and trying to really implement a bail fund around how can we reduce prison populations in Kent County. So that's something to be on the lookout for this year. And we really want to try to have that done by this year. But as we go forward and have these conversations, try to think of some community-centered driven solutions to a lot of these problems. And we'll try to keep it on topic for voter education tonight. So yeah. So why are we here? What's the whole purpose of doing a people's hearing, right? So too many community voices go unheard. A lot of times when we go to city commission, it can be a very frustrating experience depending on, your experience going to city commission. A lot of times, right, depending on who you are, it can be felt like you're not heard if you're giving public comment. I've given public comment a lot, and I haven't always felt the most heard. But we also understand that these sort of topics impact everybody's lives, right? So we want to make sure that we're having these conversations as a community, and we're really pushing for those community-driven solutions. And then the people who are often most affected are often left out of the decision making. I don't know if anybody knew, but last year Grand Rapids approved an ordinance that will change the voting precincts, right? So a lot of our community members have new voting locations now for this election cycle. And when they did that, I remember we went down and took a bunch of people, and people said, well, now my voting location, I feel like it's further from me. Or now I feel like I have a whole new voting location. I don't feel like that information was communicated to me. And community spoke, and what they got wasn't a concrete answer. They just said, well, this is going to make it better. This is going to be more efficient. This is going to be this. It's going to be that. When community wants to know how is it going to make it better, if it's going to save money, then say that, right? But don't just go on about, well, it's going to make it better, right? Explain that to us, right? So we want to make sure that our community is centered at the heart of whatever we do, right? Even right now, a lot of our immigrant community is really struggling. A lot of our immigrant community is scared, right? And there's amazing movements going on, like Movement of Osage and Grand Rapids Response to ICE, right, that are doing really amazing work. We want to make sure that we're centering the work that they are doing first, right, because we want them to lead for that sort of stuff. So, yeah, for that. And then, oh, sorry. So what will happen with this? So the testimony will be documented, right? So we post this on our YouTube page, we post this on our Facebook. We want to have stronger organizing around these different sorts of issues, right? We want to have stronger push for a lot of these things, right? And we believe that community is stronger together. So we're stronger when all of our voices are pushing for the same thing. And then we also, like I said before, we want a community-centered record for a lot of these things. We want a community-led record for these conversations that we are having. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome up Jamel Thompson to do his presentation on voter education and voter history in the state of Michigan and the United States. So thank you very much, Jamel. Where's your HDMI?
Hold on, let me do a little mental check real quick. Okay. Everything look good. You want to click for me, or I can click? Okay. I need to use the mic. Okay. Sorry, not as tall. Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? I'm glad that you all are out and about. I know you all had a long hump day today. And I'm really grateful that you all took the time out of your evenings that could be filled with rest. We're talking about stuff that's pretty important, especially with a lot of different things going on. Um, especially with a lot of different things going on. It's really good to see people out and about and really wanting to learn more about their rights as voters. You can go to the next slide. So my presentation is split up into four little parts. We're first going to be talking about the history of Black voting. Next, I'll be presenting you all with your rights, your voting rights, as far as being in the state of Michigan. I'll talk about a little bit about my fraternity, who I'm representing in our national program, and also have a brief discussion about the current Supreme Court ruling about the Voters' Rights Act of 1965. You can go to the next slide. So before we get into our agenda a little bit, so I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We were founded in December 4th, 1906. We are the oldest intercollegiate Black fraternity in the United States. And then looking at the local history, so our Ada Nu Lambda chapter, Grand Rapids chapter here of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated was chartered March 25th, 1960. So about over 65 years of impact in our community, fellowshipping. And also another thing that we do as far as a chapter is we have our Plumber Let's Parks Leadership Fund Scholarship, where every year we offer scholarships to eligible college-bound students. So I want to give a brief information about who I'm representing in the current chapter. And then also about me. So I'm Jamel Thompson. I'm our chapter historian. So I work on documenting our experience, our current experience as a chapter, as well as uncovering the impacts we've had as a chapter on the local area. It is not what I do to get paid. I work as a water resource engineer. And that's not what we came to talk about today. But my brief qualifications of being a voter, I'm 26 years old. I have never missed voting, and I've been registered to vote since I was 17 years old. So those are my qualifications to why I can get up here and talk to you about voting and stuff like that. And I'm I hope that more people here are even more qualified than I am. And with this presentation, we can hope to make more qualified voters as well. You know, the next slide. So brief conversation about the history of Black voting. You know, the next slide. So first things first, our Constitution, the original United States Constitution, did not define any of our rights as voters, and that's very interesting. With that being something very instrumental to us being democracy. It wasn't until the 15th Amendment of 1970 where we got to see that voting opened it up for all races. However, this amendment did not, in areas like the Jim Crow South, this did not protect Black people from being able to vote. A lot of these areas either had poll taxes, used intimidation, and physically would not allow Black people and other people of color to vote. And then when we're going into having the 24th Amendment of 1964, that's when we're finally seeing like there is prohibiting poll taxing, really trying to starting the conversation and building the foundation to what our voter rights are, and then finishing up with the Voters' Rights Act of 1965, which we will be talking about that a little bit later in this presentation. But that is the amendment. That's the act that kind of solidified that everybody, no matter race or gender, has a right to vote, and there shouldn't be any disturbance in that. You know, on the next slide. So then with that being said, and laying the groundwork of the history of voting, I really wanted to come and talk to you about what are our rights being Michigan residents, and as far as us being able to vote. And something about Michigan, we have some of the most, I want to say productive, or some of the best voter safety laws or voter rights laws or things that are in rules that we follow. On the next slide. So first thing, as far as your rights as a voter, that you have a if you are eligible, you have a right to vote. So that means being a U.S. citizen, you being at least 18 years old at whatever election day you are planning on voting. Which, like I said, that doesn't mean you cannot register before you are 18, like me. But again, once you turn 18, you're eligible to vote on whatever election that's so happenly is happening. You must be a resident, Michigan resident, and you also have a right, if you are eligible, to register to vote. So if any of you are not registered, you can register either online, via mail, or in person, or today, right over there. And you also have a right to ask same-day registration of whatever election day you are choosing to participate voting in. So all you have to do is go to your clerk's office and be registered the same day. You also have a right to vote without showing your ID. I think currently there's a proposal or something like that going around to change that, but as of right now, that has not been changed. But you have a right to you have a right to show. You can show your ID, and you choose not to show your ID to vote. You're still eligible. You just have to sign your affidavit right here, just saying proving that who you are. But again, you do not have to show your ID to be able to vote. And then also, you have a right to a secret ballot. Your vote is your own personal decision, your own personal knowledge, and that is something that nobody, when you're there voting, nobody has to be in the booth with you. You have a right to keep that information secret and private. Nobody's going to be in there with you, and then as well as nobody has the right to pressure or intimidate to ask you what your vote was or pressure or intimidate you into making a certain vote. And that goes right into the freedom of intimidation and some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier about the history of voting. It is illegal for anybody to threaten you, harass you, or mislead you about the rules about voting. This is years in the making, but when you get into that poll booth, it is ultimately your choice, and coming in with ever knowledge that you came in with at the poll is what should be controlling your vote. And nobody should be intimidating you to not vote in general. And then also you have rights to assistance and accessibility. If you need help, if you're not physically able or have any other things that might prohibit you from voting or either reading documentation or being able to fill in your voting ticket, you have a right to have somebody come in and help you. The only caveat is that it cannot be your employer or your union representative, so that we're not seeing any of that manipulation or that intimidation that we just talked about before. And then you also, when you are going to vote, you can have election workers come in with you into the polls to help you cast your ballot, as well as each polling precinct or location is supposed to provide you with an accessible voting machine, and also provide any other physical accommodations to help you vote. Another big one is that you have a right to stay in line. So polls closes at 8 p.m., but if you are standing in line before the closing of the polls, you are allowed to still vote. So even if you get there at 7:59 and you got there before 8 o'clock, you're able to vote as long as you've been in line before 8 o'clock, and no matter how far past 8 o'clock it has been. So make sure you get into the polls at a pretty reasonable time, but also making sure that you planning your time to vote accordingly, so that if you are missing the poll close deadline, that you might be at the polls a little bit longer, at the end of the day, you're still going to be able to vote. And then this is a little bit newer. You have a right to absentee ballot, at least newer for me. So you have a right to have one for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what disabilities or things you might have. You have a right to have And you also can join a list to be a permanent absentee balloter. So you always have that coming to you every election day. Um, and I think this is also, with this absentee ballot, this is a great way if you have college age students that are away from home. This is one of the best ways that they be able to still cast their ballots in the places they call home. And this is something I was able to do when I was in undergrad. And then also you are able to track and count your vote. Every vote is important. No vote is like every vote is important. It's important to vote. And I know with things recently, it doesn't feel like that our vote matters, but it certainly matters. You have a right to track your ballot, and you're able to confirm your ballot and using Michigan voting.org to verify that information. Okay, moving on. So I know I just sat up and dumped a whole bunch of information on you all about your rights as voters, but I really want to kind of cut in a little bit and kind of talk to you more about my fraternity. So we have 4 national programs that we focus on as a fraternity, and these are, I like to say, our major community service efforts. And one of them being a Voteless People is a Hopeless People. So this is our second oldest national program, and it was created back in the 1930s. And here we are focusing on voter education, registration. We're also trying to make sure that we are providing political awareness and empowerment to citizens to make more informed voters, as well as provide representation as well. Some things we've done on a chapter level has been assisting with canvassing in the past years, as well as attending the commissioners meeting, at City Hall. And then on a district or state level, we plan on doing Alpha Day at the Capitol in Lansing, as well as host multiple different candidate forums, either in person or virtually across the state. Okay, so we're wrapping up this presentation. I know it's pretty quick, but I guess that's good so you can know your rights as voters like the back of your hand. But wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about what's currently been happening with the Supreme Court ruling. So this is all very fresh information. This all came out like what, Monday? It's been pretty quick. So currently the Supreme Court struck down a Louisiana case where the state of Louisiana had originally did redistricting for their upcoming midterm elections, and within that redistricting, they had cut out two majority Black districts, and so community rights and the Black community in Louisiana was up in arms about that, and then did a redistricting to create two majority Black districts, so that we are able to see a lot more representation in voting based upon race, and making sure that Black people are included, and their votes are counted as valid. And what redistricting does is that it's an easy way to kind of cut out certain voters from counting in one district for another, so that a state can be either Republican or Democratic. So then, when these civil rights organizations and these community members redistrict, it became a court case against blank blank versus Louisiana. I'm blanking on who the plaintiff was, but it went all the way to the Supreme Court and basically saying that because that you redistrict by race, this new one that included more Black people, that was deemed unconstitutional. And so basically, they within this ruling, they basically gutted, made the last straw of what hold together the Voting Rights Act of 1965. They kind of uprooted Section 2 of the act, which states that you will not discriminate based on race. So with that being said, and with all this being so fresh and new, we're going to be seeing a lot more states trying to take this opportunity to redistrict, so that with these midterm elections coming up, these governorships coming up, that they're able to, certain parties are able to capture or create districts in their favor. Now, with all that being said, and I know this all sounds gloom and doom, and this is all happening so fast, I would like to say that, like, do not let this discourage you in voting and not talking about voting, getting other people to vote. Like, it's still, at the end of the day, it is still important to go out and it's still important to go out and do your civic duty and making sure that you are putting your opinion out there and in how you would like to be governed, not only just on a presidential federal level, but also on your state and your local level. This is not something that's just redistricting is not something that is just an exclusive tool for Republicans to do. It's something that also Democrats can do. This is just new information and new techniques that people are able to do. But at the end of the day, we must continue to vote, continue to use our voice, and try our best. Yeah. Yeah, I think also too with that decision, I think it's also very interesting that the Supreme Court used the act to turn around and make like they used the act, they cited the act as the reason why it wasn't constitutional. And I think that's just a little bit cruel overall. But like I said, ultimately, I think that it's still at this current point. Do not let that discourage you from not voting and not speaking up. Um, and not continue to exercise your right to vote. Well,
As we have these conversations about voting, especially around black and brown communities, I think the black and brown communities have been hurt so many times, right, in the past when it comes to voting, when it comes to election cycles, when it comes to who our representatives and who actually ends up making it out in the primaries, right? And I believe that's why there's this big push a lot of times, especially in years like this, right, where it's a
Yeah, no, that was it.
But I mean, yeah, I think, as we continue to have these conversations, like I said, I think it's important to frame that history too, and understand that, you know, I think it's a lot of other things that we have to cut through, right? Not just the voting thing, but other systemic issues, the income-based stuff, right? Because it's been a lot of times when we voted for representatives and they talk all this game during election, well, I'm gonna bring job, I'm gonna bring this, I'm gonna bring that, and then we get there and then it's not there, right? So I think it's that as well. So I'm not sure if it close out part.
No, I mean, you can go to the next slide. I mean, this was my last little bit that I wanted to present to you all with and kind of have a discussion with you all about. Feel free to still connect with us as a chapter. We will be pumping out more civic engagement events, more Hopeless People, there's a Hopeless People events within the Grand Rapids area. Um, make sure that you are informed as a voter and make sure that I know that with a lot of different things that are going on currently and so many different things that you have to think about and manage, just making sure like it is really important to stay civically engaged at some level and especially the local level. That's where you can see a lot of different positive impacts to your everyday life. And once you get into that habit, you'll continue to not only continue to do it, which is better for yourself, but also promote that to other people that needed to develop the habit as well. But other than that, like I want to thank you so much for all coming out this evening. Like I said, like it was a Wednesday, coming off of work, fighting traffic to get here, and it's really good to see that you all came out here to learn a bit more about your voting rights and really sit up and have this conversation as a community. But with that, I'll wrap it up. I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you, Janelle. For our next part of the evening, I think for a smaller group tonight, what we usually do is we'll open it up for public testimony and everything. But I think it might be more valuable, just since we're a smaller group, just to have a more intimate discussion around voter education and some recent things. We can talk a little bit more about that Supreme Court case that we get the Voting Rights Act of 1965 a little bit. I mean, something I want to think about is just sorry, I'm not something. I think something that I wanted to talk about was the recent theme around just gerrymandering all around the country, right? Like you go into a little bit around how this has become such a strategy. It used to be something that was kind of dug deeper, right? And they didn't really talk about it as much. But now that we're going into this election cycle, right, there's very uncertainties about who's going to be the next, post-voting for whatever party, right? Who's going to be, in the primaries in general for the next election. I think it's very important for us as a community to have those conversations around gerrymandering. So I don't know. Hearing that presentation that Janelle gave, hearing about that voter rights act, hearing about all of this stuff, is there any initial reaction that people have hearing that?
And I'm the social justice chair. And this is Maya, she's a committee member. But yeah, it really is disappointing to just know that we're in this situation where gerrymandering has occurred. And I know some people are not impacted directly, but I feel like everyone should be upset. And I just don't feel like there's that much outrage with, even our, Caucasian counterparts and things like that. There's but even if it doesn't directly impact families, I just think that education needs to be presented everywhere. And people need to start talking to their neighbors and their cousins and relatives, because I know there's a lot of, disagreements about politics. And families have fallen out about it, but, I'm just, if you work with someone who's kind of on the fence or who said, I didn't vote because, yeah, like, I just, it's like 2 2 AE rules. Just I would encourage everyone to talk to your coworkers, your neighbors, and don't be afraid to ask them why they're voting the way they are, even though everyone has a right to vote. Just open up the dialogue.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say to that? Yes. Both.
So if we don't show up, we're going to have a government that does unto us instead of does for us. So that's just the way I feel about it. Because I'm about working class issues. Because I'm a woman that works full time, still got food stamps, I have one kid, and that's in America. You should be able to work one job and pay for a place to live. That's just me. So I feel real strongly about the issue. I think it is important for us to talk about. But I also want to say too, because we're talking about young people. This year, I know I do go to the Democratic Party meeting. That's just my particular affiliation. And I saw their convention. And this year there was a lot more young people turning out. But I'm going to tell you something. This is something I've always heard about. And I think that our communities are, you don't hang around enough. White people don't hang around with enough black people. Black people don't hang around with enough white people. We're separated. And our kids are separated too. So, how do we get our kids together working for their future? Because whether it's black kid or white kid, it's going to have everything. They're all going to have to sit there and pay rent. They're all going to have to, try to be able to get a job that will support the family, right? So I just feel like a lot of times our country has, our city has, it was easier for a white person to buy a house than a black man. We called it redline back in the day. So what I'm talking about is over history. We had white people having opportunities, black people getting dreads, and it's hurting us to this day where I look and I see dangerous neighborhoods, dangerous schools. You see what I'm saying? It's like, so I don't know how I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah. And I think you said something very valuable too. I think even like looking back at home in Grand Rapids and like connecting with those younger voters, right? I'm 25, right? So I fall within that age range. And for me, when I was young, right, my whole life, right, I didn't really care about politics. I didn't really care about the president. I didn't care who my governor was. I didn't care who my senator was. I didn't care who my reps were. I just knew at the end of the day, I didn't want to be poor. That was my whole mindset. I wanted, and I think as a young person, right, and looking at the past elections, right, over my lifetime, right, I haven't felt like I have had a lot of good choices. For me, at least, right? That's just how I feel. I haven't felt like I have been like, wow, this is a strong candidate that represents who I am. Right? There's been a few, right? Like, I think there's been certain candidates that came along and have talked a lot about those working class issues. But then it's even like, I think the system, right? I think a lot of young voters look at it this way. The system is so entrenched in a lot of these systemic issues, right, that have been built over decades and centuries, right? So how can one candidate say that I'm gonna dismantle this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that? You're one person, right? And there's been a lot of candidates that have came along and have said those same things, and they have not gotten those results. So I think a lot of young people have just felt really burned from that. So, you asked that question of how do we connect with that voters. I think a lot of young people just want to see results. They want to see people who are actually going to step in these roles and then do the things that they said they're going to do. And that's why I think a lot of those candidates that are really big about those sort of things do very well. Like if you look at New York, Zoran Mondani was a very big candidate, right? And I do like him because at the center of his root, right, he's like, I want to do these things. I don't really care about these other things. I want to make sure New Yorkers are fine, right? As a young person, right, in Grand Rapids or wherever, I want to hear that I'm going to be fine. I care about you first. I don't care about whatever this other interest. I don't care about, I'm not taking this country, right? If you look, money is, it's easier to track now, right? So if we're following the money, we're looking at who's getting that money. It's easy to see who has some allegiances towards what, right? And it's harder to hide that sort of stuff. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
So I appreciate that, especially because I just have enjoyed the heck out of watching what's going on in New York City.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the thing. You hear a candidate talking about wanting to do this, wanting to do that. What you're talking about is voter registration. But what a lot of people don't know, especially young people, is how our politics work. Like, there's the Senate, there's the House, and then there's the president, or in the state situation, the governor. And that all of these people, if we want direct votes, okay, or something like that, we gotta get all of the people and more of the people in the legislature would have to vote for that. For it to, so if you've got one candidate in your area that's talking about doing this, like say medical for all, and then they give it, they win, and they go on to be in the Senate in national, okay? It takes a whole lot of senators to vote for medical for all for it to become something.
So it's like, how are you going to change that?
So what happens is that people don't understand, right? It makes it's a bit of a disadvantage to not know how those things actually show up. It takes several different many people to work towards something. And then even vote me, like in a way, I have a rough look in my city because we don't have a strong mayor, whereas New York's mayor is strong mayor. He's not working with somebody like here. We got a guy that's setting the agenda and all of that, and making sure how the money's going around is the city manager. And we don't elect him. We don't go with our votes and pick the city manager. We pick our commissioners, and we pick our mayor, but all of those people are the ones that hire the city manager or fire him. Frankly, I don't mind ours to get fired. And I wouldn't mind ours, so I like the idea of having a strong mayor, because if we use 4 things we don't like, we want them out of there. But I can't vote out the city manager.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
To kind of respond to what you were asking, the things that have happened in the last week or so, my reaction immediately was sadness and fear, but then also not surprise. So we've kind of been on this journey. How do we get folks to participate? I think there's 2 things. One is voter education. So what we did here tonight is a part of that. We can talk about, what your elected officials do. That's voter education as well. But then meeting them where they are. And so, you put it on social media and stuff like that. I think that helps to get that word out. But then the second way, I think, is kind of reflective of one of the slides that Thompson had earlier. And it showed when they were developing the Voting Rights Act, there was like this huge line of people that were trying to vote, trying to get rich, they're trying to do something. And what struck me was that was at a time when it was very difficult for them to do whatever it was they were trying to do. They were trying to vote. It was very difficult. It made it difficult, so they really wanted to do it. And once we now have the ability to do it, we've lost interest. Many of our elections, the turnout is relatively low. And so I think the second way is going to be, as we keep going down this journey, what's happening, less and less ability to participate, then we're going to wake up and realize the importance of being want to participate.
You know, I mean, it's just, I feel like if this were allowing them to do all of the things, you know, he would have been gone. So I'm trying to understand, like, are people just like, you know, because marijuana is legal, are people just numb to all the stuff that's going on? Like, what can we do? I remember when Egypt, Tahrir Square, years back, they overthrew that president. I wonder, like, what's preventing us from doing this thing? You know, like, what are you all opinion are some of the hardships and the challenges that, you know, don't allow us to speak up and say, you know what, we're standing up. We're going to overthrow you or whatever the term may be. I'm frustrated with that.
We're so divided. It's not a majority that can take the appropriate actions if they want to get somebody out of office. Same about this one, that we were divided. So it wasn't another majority that was taking some type of action. We got excited about the use of impeachment, and I think a lot of people at that time, this is one education as well, a lot of people at that time thought that impeachment meant that you were firing out. But all that meant was that we don't have a trial. And then you need numbers for the trial to go a certain way. And it's a majority, but it's a super majority. And so in the divided context, if you don't have a super majority, that's not going to happen.
So you're talking about, I'm sorry, talking about impeachment. Did I hear you say? Did you talk about impeachment, where you want to get somebody out of office? I couldn't hear you very well.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what I was saying, I was just saying that a few years ago, we got excited about this concept of impeachment, and a lot of people thought that that meant that we impeach you and then you're out. But that's not what it means. Similar to what our representatives do, what the executive officer, what is impeachment? That's for education. So impeachment just means that we don't have a trial. But then when you have a trial, now you need a majority in order to come up with some type of action. And it's not just a simple majority, it's a super majority. And so until you've got that type of situation, you're not going to do
You're talking about impeachment at the national level, like the president.
well, that's what we got to decide.
There you go. Gotcha. Now I understand. And the reason I got confused was, I once did the lifeguard governor, and I decided that there was a bunch of petitions going around to impeach the governor
So we could probably start going towards our wrap up. I think I want to just make sure nobody else has any other comments or anything they want to say before we wrap. Well, I thank you very much for showing up today and taking time out of your evening. I know we're small tonight. Our next people here is going to be on June 6th around environmental justice. We have an environmental justice panel coming up next week on the 13th of May. That's going to be this young brother right here. Again, to Robert Floyd from the City of Grand Rapids and the Mayor's Choir from Grand Rapids Metro Council. We're going to talk about some of the environmental issues that this community faces. If you don't know, this community has some of the highest rates of asthma, respiratory diseases, respiratory issues in the nation. So we're going to talk about why that is and then go a little deep about how we can go into fix that. If you don't know, like EPA, that's who studied under this new administration. So a lot of these environmental issues that are coming about just are getting answered. We're seeing a lot of turned up with data centers right now, and they hold significant environmental implications. So we're going to go into that. But I will also send out a follow-up email as well tomorrow morning, so you'll have all the dates. And we'll also send out the full recording of this as well. So I thank you all for your time, and have a just drive home. Thank you very much. Yeah, I wish we got more people, but
First of May. First of May.
yeah. Well, I mean, this is like a deep experience, but